Hello and welcome to BAFTA Greats, an ongoing series of interviews with individuals key to the development of BAFTA over the course of its history. Iain Smith is one of the UK's leading film producers. He has worked on a wide variety of films, from Local Hero and The Mission, to Children of Men and the recent BAFTA and Oscar-winning Mad Max Fury Road. In 2005, he was the recipient of BAFTA Scotland's Outstanding Achievement in Film Award, and in 2008, he was awarded an OBE for his services to the British film industry.
I joined BAFTA, that's a long time ago. I mean, I'm not sure what the date, you'd have to look up the records. But it was certainly a long, long time ago. I mean, early 80s probably, or maybe even late 70s. And I wanted to be part of the higher level discussion about cinema and film. And I always saw this place as what it is, the academy. This was where the great minds would meet and discourse. It hasn't quite worked out like that, but that idea prevails, and I think it's essential in one form or another. Technology is very helpful in this respect to convey the transmission of ideas and thoughts from people who've achieved things, you know. And so joining BAFTA here was a fairly early decision of mine to spend some valuable money doing that. And then, of course, back in Scotland, we were needing to be elevated by BAFTA and starting up BAFTA Scotland back in the 80s.
It's quite interesting because BAFTA North came about first, and that's sort of disappeared. So we're now left with the three central BAFTAs in this country. Yeah. And could you talk a little bit about? Obviously, you travelled back a lot to Scotland and have been involved with so many Scottish film organisations. But what the discussions were in the early days around the idea of BAFTA being a separate Scottish satellite organisation?
Well, Scotland is dear to me, but it's also a great place to be from, if you follow me. And I tried several times to base myself back in Scotland and found I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So I, like so many Scots, had to leave and do well outside. But I think the reason BAFTA worked in Scotland is, and perhaps not so much in the north, is that one of the advantages of Scotland, particularly Scotland, is its sense of self-identity. It has a strong sense of being distinct and separate in that sense. I don't mean in the political sense necessarily. But so I think BAFTA Scotland, why that rose, we'd fought all through the 70s to gain recognition of any sort for film. There were various organisations in Scotland, the Scottish Film Council, Films of Scotland and so on, but they were uninterested in developing the business, which was at a very, very low level, sponsored films and occasionally proper documentaries. But BAFTA Scotland therefore became, as we developed and the bills happened, and there started to be a sense that, hang on a minute, we can actually do this. We've just got to do it. And as that started up, I think the idea of having a more academic aspiration started to arise. And I mean, we had a great number of people who could write and talk about film, but very few who could actually make films. I also remember an old artist, Scottish artist, whose final exhibition was panned by the critics. He was in his mid-80s. And he said to me, so I'm so sorry to read the reviews of your exhibition. And he said, son, he said, well, the thing you've got to remember is that critics are to artists as ornithologists are to birds. So there was a sense in the early 80s that it was all very well, we were starting to make things, but there was no way of celebrating those things and no way of sort of measuring and recognizing what people had achieved. And that meant that there was no ladder behind us for the aspirational young coming in. And I think one of the key things that BAFTA in all its manifestations does and must continue to do is to give direction and hope to young people. And that was the main reason in my thinking for BAFTA Scotland.
And when the idea began to be mooted, what was the initial response?
A lot of naysayers, a lot of why. I mean, BAFTA was seen as a centrist, London-based organisation, and I think there was hesitation based on a sort of inverse dependency mentality, and I think it took quite a bit of effort. I mean, I was there spiritually. I was too busy trying to earn a living to spend much time on the mechanics of it. But I think in those days we were pushing with Scottish Government, we were pushing with the Scottish Film Council, if I remember rightly, to try and get them to raise their chins a little bit and help to start and to fund it and put it together. And I think we succeeded. I think probably around the middle of the 80s.
Yep.
And at that time, it was still quite a hesitant affair, and I think the awards didn't happen for at least 3 or 4 years after the formation of BAFTA Scotland, because everything had to be done one step at a time, and it was just you had to maintain your sight lines of where you're headed, and just keep pushing, keep going forward.
It's interesting to look at the timeline of BAFTA's development and its decentralisation, because I agree with you. I think BAFTA North just felt like more of an extension of London than anything else. But you have BAFTA Scotland in '86, that's then followed by LA, then followed by BAFTA Cymru, and then New York. And it really feels like the Scotland was the first of the deck of cards.
The breakout, yes. No, I think that's probably true. I think that's something that you can appreciate with the benefit of hindsight. But I think it was, and I think that was helped by the fact that we were quite curmudgeonly as Scots. I know that will come as a surprise, but we were sort of, what about us, And I think that that created a momentum that perhaps might not have existed.
Is there a specific area that, and not just looking at BAFTA Scotland, that you would like to see BAFTA move into more?
Yes, I mean, we have to rethink why we exist, all of us, individuals and agencies and societies. We have to work out, why are we here? The reason I wanted to make films was actually nothing to do with film. It was to do with stories. And stories, if you think about stories and the need for human beings to tell each other stories, to terrify and reassure, that's the role of storytelling, then we are faced now with a multitude of possibilities. We are faced with technology enabling us to deliver stories that we could never have conceived of. So I think the idea, if there's any danger, it's that we get precious and sort of say, well, this is film, I mean, film and television, for instance. I've been having dinner last night with a TV guy who is just about to make his first film, and he was saying all the differences between television and film, and I found myself saying, forget that. There's no differences. It's just about telling a story really well. And now moving into high definition technologies, into virtual reality technologies, as we sit here, we think, well, how can you possibly tell a story in virtual reality? But I'll bet you there's a way. And somebody will get it, somebody will open that door, and we'll all wonder what the hell we were thinking about.
Do you still have the same excitement with projects that you had when you were a 13-year-old coming up with your little film projects?
Absolutely. Absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt. And if I don't have that excitement, I won't make the film. Because you need that energy to carry you through. Because it's a very perverse process. And adversity is totally normal. I rather glibly say, a film that's easy to make is hard to watch. And something about it that if you're not putting yourself in the pain threshold, then you're in danger of doing something mediocre.
Iain Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And putting yourself in the picture, you're the ambassador in Spy Game.
I am.
Are you in any intention of going in front of a camera again?
No. I used to act as a child. That's how I got my money to buy.
So you were directing and acting in your movies.
Well, it was funny, that one, because Tony Scott, God rest him, you know, was a wonderful man. And I was sitting going through the casting list, and the casting list of the character and then the possibilities to play the different parts. And I turned over, and there was Ambassador Cathcart Iain Smith. He hadn't said anything to me at all. So I phoned him up, and I said, Tony, I just gone through the casting list here, and I said, you know, some of these people we just can't afford, you know. And he said, really? Like who? And I said, well, Ambassador Cathcart. And then there was a pause, and he went, oh, I meant to tell you, not I meant to ask you, I meant to tell you. But the other funny thing about that moment, if you don't mind me indulging myself, was I was standing at the back of the Redford and what's her name? Rampling, having the conversation in the foreground, and I'm at the back, and they're referring to me. I'm her husband, and I've got these little Japanese extras who I was talking to, and I was watching Tony running back and forward, and he was getting himself into a fankle, quite frankly. And at one point, and of course he was just passing me, and I went, Tony, and he went, yeah. And I said, really, you've got to remember that we've got to be out of here by 2 o'clock, because we've got the scene of the body in the conservatory, and we've got to, you know, if we've got at 6 o'clock, you know, do one of those. Tony went, yeah, but I was going to do 3 setups. I'm only going to do 2 now, and I'll come over and I'll combine, you know. Okay, great, that's fine. And I turned around, and these little Japanese extras were looking at me open-mouthed. And one of them said, you must never talk to the director like that, because they didn't realise that I was the producer on the film. They just thought I was another extra. And it was a very funny moment.